you may all be familiar with. How many of you are or know of or familiar with the English poet Alexander Pope? Okay. He's a great literary writer. Among some things that he's written are three very popular quotes, one of where I want to base the foundation of my conversation today. He borrowed actually a portion of this quote from an English proverb, and it is, "To err is human, to forgive divine." Now, the second part is what he expanded, but the first part, again, is part of an English proverb that says, "To err is human, to continue in that era, parentheses, and pride is diabolical." So, and that's not actually the aim that I want to stay in, but I thought it important because I thought it's good to pose a question that we can think on as we move towards something that's in the same family. Why is it that when we do err, because we are faulty, because it is our human nature, we are imperfect, we are failed in the craftsmanship of our humanity. So why is it that when we do err, why is it so difficult to either recover from that error? Why is it so difficult to forgive ourselves for that error? Why is it difficult to forgive others? Why do we begin to know ourselves by the mistakes that we've made? And why do we allow that to debilitate us? That's just a question. That's not the vein that I want to stay in, but it's in the same family. I've heard variations of that particular quote through the years. In my former career, I was in politics, and we used to actually make or use that a variation of that quote to say, "To err is human, to forgive divine, to do the same thing is just stupid." And that was when we found out we made political errors that could cost us an election or X, Y, and Z. We were like, okay, we know not to do that again. And it also applies to your regular life. There's also another quote, that a variation of that quote by Herbert Porotna, who I think he's Russian, but I know him from Toastmasters. He's wrote a lot of books regarding public speaking and how to turn a conversation into a great. So some of you may be familiar with him from his writings. He's a U.S. banker and so forth. And he said, "To err is human, to admit it is not." Again, that struggle to identify where we may be flawed. And it's interesting because we are expected to be flawed because the Bible says that the only infallible flesh is Jesus Christ. And it is because of him redeeming us back to him that we have this divinity that helps connects and bridge our frailty to our greatness. And that's where I want to stay, to talk about our greatness. At work a few weeks ago, I was given a task, and I just moved into this department maybe a couple of weeks, 2 weeks prior to then. And it was a pretty hefty assignment, and I was given a very short time frame to turn it around. And I was like, why would they slam me with this as soon as I got over here? I'm still trying to parse out everything in this division. It's the biggest division on campus. And we have 9 departments, 15 areas within those departments. Why would I be given this? However, it was given to me because I was told that it was an expectation that I could do it well. And I said, well, okay, that's fair because I expect of myself to do things well. So I began to work on this assignment, and I realized that there was information in this assignment that had not been asked of me to include. And then I began to make an educated guess that the reason why I was not asked to provide this additional information is one, because of the time that I had been there, the time rather they given me to turn this project around, and probably did not think that I would be able to gather that information and make it real data and include it. And also I was so new to the department, maybe I wouldn't know where to look. So I decided that, you know what, I'm gonna do this project anyway, and I'm gonna add all the bells and the whistles because I know it's relevant information. So as I began to put this together, and I did it all within the time frame that was given, and I looked at it and I proofed it. I didn't have anyone there to give it a thorough proof with me, but I proofed it several times. And I was like, gosh, this is a good product. I'm delivering something that's really good. And I felt really good because it's okay to acknowledge when you do something well. That's something that we have an issue with doing as well. So I did that well, and I was okay with it. And I thought, this is wonderful. So I sent the the document to the individuals to whom it needed to go. And I stepped back for maybe 15 minutes. And then I went to look at the document again. And I saw where there was an error. And it wasn't with my data. It was really cosmetic. It was with some formatting. One of my tabs, my format was not, one of my header rows was not formatted exactly the same as the rest of the document. And I realized that I had skipped that row. It wasn't vastly different. It was noticeable enough to me because I own the document, so I know what the document looked like. But it was enough to see that I had erred. And I really had a panic attack, and I said, oh my God, I messed up. Man, I messed up. I'm new to this area. They came to me because they expected that I would be able to do this. I would be able to produce this product because they're slightly aware of my skill set. But I wanted to really showcase a different angle to show that, wait a minute, I'm thorough, I can be accurate, and I can still do this in a timely fashion. And I messed up, and I was so upset because I felt like I messed up. And I hurriedly went in to correct the document, and I sent it back to the VPs. And I said, for a moment, I was excited because I thought I had given you a great product. I did something great. But I found an error, so greatness is out the door. Please accept this corrected version as your final document. And one of the VPs replied to me quickly, more quickly than I would have expected, and said, no ma'am, please do not give your greatness over to death, for to err is simply human. And I thought about that for a while. I thought about that for a long while. And even though those words, I kept rereading the email, and I thought it was pretty profound for him to say that, especially in that setting, and especially him being at the level that he was. I thought it was really great and encouraging for him to say that. And I heard what he said. I mean, I read the words, and I understand what it means, but I still was struggling with the fact that I messed up because I made an error. And I don't think that I'm perfect, but we kind of do think that we're perfect in some things. And it's difficult for us to acknowledge our frailty and our imperfections. And when we think we've done something good and we've messed up, sometimes it's difficult for us to recover from that. And I literally had an issue, or I kind of struggled staying completely focused on other things throughout the rest of the day, the things that I was tasked with. I was able to perform them, but I was a bit debilitated because I was like, man, now perhaps they're not going to think that I have the level of skill that I have, because there was an error that really didn't affect much, and it wasn't such a great error that we couldn't recover from it, but I allowed it to cast a shadow on the greatness of my ability, my skill set, and the things that I know that I own. And we do that. Why do we do that, though? Why do we feel like that we cannot fail, we cannot be in error, when again, the Bible says the only infallible flesh is that of Jesus Christ. He was the only one that walked and took on sin, yet he was not sin. He's the only one who didn't make a mistake. There is an expectation that in the weakness of our humanity, that we'll fall and that we'll make mistakes, we'll say things, sometimes unintentional, sometimes intentional.
All right.
Sometimes we'll be in ourselves, we'll be in our emotions, we'll be in our own head. Sometimes we're so focused, and we can be so selfish in our thinking that we don't even acknowledge that something that we've said and or done is impacting someone the way that it is. It's who we are. We're frail as human beings. And because we're so focused on what we've done or what has happened or how somebody may perceive it, we don't look past that to see how that may be affecting the next thing. But even more than that, we capture our own, we enslave our own selves. It starts with a mental thing. What is it that has happened throughout the course of our lives where we have erred when we thought we were doing something good? And maybe it was intentional, but again, what is it in that thing that has caused us to not be able to function? We began to kind of function as a version of ourselves. We still believe some things about ourselves, and we still want to represent to others who we think they see us as. But we're kind of functioning as a version because we're kind of stuck and we're debilitated by that failure that we've seen in ourselves. And it's only human to make those errors. What is not divine is to be able to acknowledge that and to move beyond that and still ascend to your greatness. How do you move into your greatness on the weight of your failure, on the weight of your frailty? How do you catapult yourself from your failure to still ascend to your greatness, whatever your greatness looks like? How do you do that? How do you do that without constantly replaying your frailties and your weaknesses in your own mind that you don't want anyone else to see? But why are we so caught up with someone else knowing where we are imperfect? Why are we so caught up on that? Why do we feed into that, and that's the thing that we build upon? When it's expected that I am imperfect, but it's how I move beyond my imperfection and how I can still see the greatness that I am and still ascend to that. I'm not saying that we don't recognize where we are weak and we don't recognize where we have hurt someone else, or we don't recognize where the failure has taken place. Because to me, that is a great sign of maturity. It's very difficult to look at yourself and to say, I failed. I made an error. It's very challenging, but why is it? Because you don't have to spend your life there in that space. It was never meant for you to spend your life in that space. That's why there's a divine power that day battles. And that's the question that I wanted to in our natural lives, in different areas of our natural lives, in our workplace, with our family relationships, with our children and our marriages. But what does it look like when we have erred and we take upon the shame of that error and we think that somehow that takes away, it negates the greatness of who we are? What does that look like? And how do we push beyond that to recover from that? And how do we still function and be true and genuine to ourselves, even in that, and not go on to function as a version of ourselves, that version of who we think we want, or who we think people think we should be, what we think they think we should look like? What is expected of us? Am I doing this because it's expected that I do this, or this is really who I am? I want to leave that question. I don't know how much time I have, but I'm done.